Oh, hi, hi. We have a couple of people watching. We have 25 people watching. Aditi Kulkarni, so excited. This is one of my favorite films. I also really like this film. I think, in a way, I'm doing this live stream to actually recommend this film to people because this is a film that I will recommend really to everybody because मैंने जिसको भी recommend करी है अभी तक उन सबको पसंद ही आई है फिल्म. एक बार मैं थोड़ी लाइट ठीक कर लेता हूँ. ग्रेट. Hi Jabin PK, hi Sunny Khair, hi Sejal Mal, Noah Baumbach, yes. Pranav Patil, huge fan of Noah Baumbach's work, recently watched all of his films, and I jumped when I saw this in my recommendations today. Thanks in advance. Sunny Khair, hi. Great. So before we begin, I did want to give you a quick introduction of Noah Baumbach. I found some images of him. My internet might be a little weird today, but it's fine. To go full on in this film, but because they were also shooting in New York, in California, and in Paris, so they had to cut down on the budget a little bit. And how they cut down was that they shot on a Canon 5D Mark II, which I also did not know. I sort of could guess that it isn't, like a very expensive camera that they shot on, but I could never have guessed like Canon 5D. So they really shot this as a student film, and more than budget, actually, this was an artistic decision from Noah Baumbach because he wanted this to have a very independent feel, and he chose to do this in black and white also because he was inspired from all the Woody Allen की imagery, जो उनका एक visual style था न्यूयॉर्क को दिखाने का. उनसे वो बहुत इंस्पायर्ड थे, एक तरह से उसको होमाज भी पे करना चाहते थे. पर ये पूरी फिल्म कैनन 5D पे शूट हुई है विथ नॉट टू मेनी विजुअल इफेक्ट्स, और इसका क्रू भी बहुत छोटा सा था. दे दे चोज टू डू दैट ऑल्सो बिकॉज एक तो बड़े एक्सपेंसिव लोकेशन पे शूट करने के राइट्स, और इन्होंने म्यूजिक भी बहुत तगड़ा तगड़ा लगाया है इसमें, तो राइट्स टू दैट म्यूजिक ऑल्सो कम्स एट अ वेरी एक्सपेंसिव प्राइस. सो आई थिंक ऑल इन ऑल कुछ इसका $7 million बजट था, but most of that went into rights for shooting at location and for music. सिनेमाटोग्राफी का इतना कुछ इसमें बजट था नहीं, यूज तो नहीं किया था, और शॉर्ट्स भी काफी सिंपल से है. व्हाट आई रियली लाइक अबाउट दिस फिल्म इज द एडिटिंग. और ये मैंने आज रिवॉच करी फिल्म आज दिन में, और थ्रू आउट द फिल्म आई जस्ट केप्ट राइटिंग इन माई नोट्स की हाउ ग्रेट इज दिस कट, हाउ ग्रेट इज दिस ट्रांजिशन. और हम एक दो ट्रांजिशन शायद देखेंगे भी अभी. बट ही इज ऑल्सो मेकिंग यूज ऑफ, जैसे हमने जो फ्रेंच न्यू वेव के एपिसोड में भी बात करी थी, जो जंप कट्स होते हैं ना, जो गोदार्ड ने पॉपुलराइज किए थे इन अ वे उस टाइम, तो इसमें भी आप बहुत सारे जंप कट्स देखते हैं, और ट्रांजिशंस का यूज इन्होंने किया है टू ऐड ह्यूमर टू द सीन एंड टू ऐड, मतलब टू मेक सीन्स गो फॉरवर्ड. उस तरह से इन्होंने जंप कट्स का बहुत ही प्यारा यूज किया है इसमें, और कई कई सीक्वेंसेस में आप देखेंगे कि ही इज ऑल्सो यूजिंग ट्रांजिशंस टू टेक द स्टोरी फॉरवर्ड. जैसे एक सीन में कैरेक्टर कुछ कहता है, एंड देन जो विजुअल स्टोरी टेलिंग होती है ना, वी कट टू द नेक्स्ट सीन, और उसमें ऑलरेडी कुछ हो रहा है जो पहले कैरेक्टर कह रहा था, तो वो भी हम देखेंगे एक दो बार. Before we move to the images of the sequences, एक बार मैं comments पढ़ लेता हूँ and let's see कि क्या चल रहा है. Which one you like, Frances Ha or Marriage Story? I saw Marriage Story at Mumbai Film Festival. I think I saw it with Vaibhav. I really liked it. The writing on that was so good and so hard hitting, especially if you've had such a life experience. But I think I like Marriage Story better than Frances Ha. Frances Ha's humor I really like, and it's a very feel-good movie. And I think I've seen Frances Ha maybe 5 times. I think this was my fifth rewatch of the film today. And this is a film that I can keep watching because it is a feel-good film like that. But Marriage Story I can't rewatch. वो बस एक बार हो गया, and I liked it, but it's not the kind of film that you rewatch. But I think as a film, I liked Marriage Story better. Yes, it stopped for a bit because I don't know, my software is a little, not software today, but the internet. You couldn't hear me when I shared the screen. I think you could hear, I think I repeated what I was saying anyway, so it's fine. Love the music of the movie, yes. इन्होंने फ्रांसवा ट्रूफो की जो फिल्मों में फ्रेंच कंपोजर होते थे, आई थिंक जॉर्ज डेलेरियो और भी दो तीन कंपोजर्स जो उस समय फ्रेंच न्यू वेव की फिल्मों के लिए कंपोज करते थे, उन सब का म्यूजिक इन्होंने यूज किया इस फिल्म में, और बहुत ऐसा, मतलब न्यूयॉर्क में काफी पेरिस फील्स वैसा सा वाइब है. मैं एक बार इमेजेस भी देखेंगे फिल्म की, एंड देन मे बी यू कैन गेट अ बेटर सेंस ऑफ इट. बट इफ यू ऑलरेडी वॉच द फिल्म एंड यू वॉच द फिल्म एंड देन यू आर कमिंग टू द स्ट्रीम, तो I'm sure मतलब you already know how funny this film can be and how, मतलब every time I watch this film it's such a, से मूड ठीक हो जाता है, मूड अच्छा हो जाता है. और आज तो एक्चुअली somehow, मतलब until the end, मतलब I was really rooting for her character somehow, especially since now I'm living a very peaceful life, तो I'm very mindful when I'm watching a film. तो बीच में एक बार भी फोन नहीं चेक किया और मैं पूरा मतलब नोट्स बना रहा हूँ साथ में. तो towards the end तक तो मतलब I almost started crying because I was rooting so much for Greta Gerwig's character. And हाँ मतलब when the dance sequence happens, I almost started crying because पता नहीं, ऐसा बहुत ही wholesome सी film है actually है. I should also tell you that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach wrote this film together. Noah Baumbach directed it, and Greta Gerwig is also playing the lead actor in the film. And Greta Gerwig has been in his films before. I think Greenberg maybe with he. And Greta Gerwig is now producing and directing also her own films. Lady Bird बनाई थी उन्होंने. And also Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach are now married to each other, and I think they also have a baby together. And I think they were dating while Frances Ha was being made. So if we can look at the images now, there are a couple of things that I wanted to. I'm not going to give you the entire plot. Genuinely watch this film if you're on this stream and you haven't watched it. मतलब इस फिल्म के लिए मैं ऐसा भी नहीं बोलूंगा if you're in a particular mind space then watch it. But yeah, just watch it anytime, any day really. This is like a feel good film. But there are a couple of things that Noah Baumbach is doing or using rather very interestingly in this film that I really enjoyed, and I think matlab I'm all in for the experimentation that's happening. And there are also a lot of references to the French New Wave. बीच में एक बार कहीं पे जॉन पियर ल्यूथ का भी एक डायलॉग रेफरेंसिंग आता है. But what I most like was ग्रेटा गर्विग का जो कैरेक्टर एकदम पूरी फिल्म में ऐसे एक बिल्डअप की तरह से उभर कर आया है. एंड दिस इज अ कैरेक्टर फिल्म, एंड आई थिंक ग्रेटा इज इन all of the scenes. I think she's in every scene because we are looking at this world through her perspective. And this time when I watched it, actually, I realized that this is more a film about like urban exploration in a way, in the sense that you move from a smaller town, from your parents' house to New York, a city like New York, and then you're also in the arts field. So the struggles that you face, and you keep shifting houses. Matlab, I think I last watched this film maybe 2 years ago actually. And uske baad se I've also been in Mumbai for 2 years. So I've sort of had the same experience. I've shifted places. I've found some work in the arts field. So I could relate a lot to, like the struggles of this character, especially in the sense of like how big the city suddenly is, and then you have to also be able to pay rent somehow and all of that. But there is one metaphor that I could also talk about in this stream today that I could only see when I watched it this time. और वो बहुत cleverly done है और वो end में थोड़ा सा reveal होता है, but उन चीज़ों की बहुत बात करी है कि जैसे स्पेस बड़ी है फिर स्पेस कम है, तो इन अ वे लाइक शी इज मूविंग फ्रॉम Sacramento to New York. But this film really, if you live in any big city, if it's even in India, if it's in Mumbai, then so you will definitely relate. But especially if you're moving from a smaller town and a family residential area to a bigger city to find work, then this is a film that will really hit you because any young person who is in a big city definitely goes through these struggles. So without any more talk, let's quickly jump into the film. And before this, I should show you the dancing sequence. So we open with these shots of, it's a very iconic opening also actually with this film. But basically, these are two friends, Sophie and Frances, right? Oh, her name is also Frances, by the way, which obviously is a reference to France. And she also goes to Paris in this film. So we see कि एक खुलती है फिल्म और शुरू में म्यूजिक भी बज रहा है ऐसा फ्रेंच न्यू वेव का ही, and they're dancing around the city and they go around और अपार्टमेंट में फिर वो आते हैं, पूरा एक मोन्टाज है इनका बहुत प्यारा सा, और इस मोन्टाज के थ्रू ही ना इन दोनों का कैरेक्टर एकदम से वो बता देते हैं. मतलब Sophie is the person who says कि I will never eat a domesticated dog, and then she says कि you say that just because they're cute. In a way, like their friendship is established in this. And Sophie is shown as this character who has an OCD about cleanliness and organization. And she says that on the bed you have to take off your socks and things like that. And when I was talking about transitions, I really meant that साउंड के साथ जो ट्रांजिशन का इसमें यूज है ना वो इतना कमेंडेबल है. ओपनिंग सीक्वेंसेस में भी देयर इज अ शॉट ऑफ द लास्ट शॉट बिफोर द ओपनिंग टाइटल. शी हैज अ लैपटॉप एंड एज सून एज शी क्लोजेस द लैपटॉप, वो जो थर्ड की आवाज आती है ना उस फ्लैप बंद होने की, उस आवाज पे ही कट्स टू द ओपनिंग टाइटल. और पूरी फिल्म में आप देखोगे या तो जैसे ही कुछ टेक्स्ट आ रहा है या अगले सीन पे एकदम से कट हो रहा है, तो या तो म्यूजिक आ रहा है एकदम से एंड इट्स यूजुअली अ जंप कट, पर साउंड के साथ उसको कैसा एकदम से बिल्कुल लिंक किया है वो बहुत मजेदार है. After the opening title, we see that it's a breakup essentially, but it's a breakup because she can't move in with her boyfriend because she's living with her friend and she can't leave her friend. And they also say, Sophie and her, that they are like a lesbian couple that doesn't have sex anymore. So their friendship is that close that she's in a way ready to give up her boyfriend also because she wants to continue living with Sophie. So the boyfriend is a little disappointed. He's like, Francis, I asked you to move in and you said no. And then they're having a very intense like discussion and she's feeling a little bad. And then suddenly she gets a call and it's Sophie. And he's like, yeah, yeah, pick it up, it's fine. So she's like, no, I'll pick it up later, it's okay. He's like, yeah, no, pick it up. And then she picks it up and suddenly she's like, yo, girl, what's up? Are you drunk? And then look at this guy's face. Like, what just happened to me? And so he gets up and he gets a beer from the fridge and he's like, maybe this isn't working. इस पूरे सीक्वेंस के थ्रू भी एकदम से हम ना फ्रांसिस का कैरेक्टर बहुत सही से समझ जाते हैं. And then she says that like, okay, you're going to be a single guy now. So she says, I thought you said this isn't working if we can't move in together. He says, we can move in together. And then she's like, I don't know that I believe anything that I'm saying. Then he says, this hasn't been great for a while. Then she says, okay, then I'll leave. So he says, where are you going? She says, home, I guess. I'm really tired. I'm always so tired. And then Again, he's trying to push it and he says, let's move in together. And as soon as he says that, we cut to a party sequence and there's music playing. So through the visual transition, it's very clear that she has broken up with him and it's done and she's left the place because we never see her leave the place or anything. Like it cuts directly to the party. Very smart transitions in the entire film, actually. She's the kind of person who would get drunk at a party and say, I can't get interested in art or books or movies about animals. The animals have to talk or be at war for me to be interested. The dialogue writing is also very, in a way, like honest and vulnerable, which we will talk about in a bit. And her character is, matlab, she's clumsy. She has kind of like a low self-esteem also, in the sense that like we see her struggling also in social situations. But all in all, like her character is somebody who's sort of trying to make it in the big city, but she also has integrity in a way. One second. And as I said, like, because she keeps questioning herself even in social scenarios. She says something and then she takes it back or answers her own questions and then contradicts herself. So at some point, she says, like, the person who she just broke up with, I think Dan was an alcoholic. Then she suddenly corrects herself and says he wasn't a real alcoholic, but sometimes he would have like 12 beers. So writing like that, it's like, well, the humor in this film is very subtle. It's passive aggressive in a way, and it's very urban also. Like it's very modern humor in a way. And the descriptions of people also is quite literal, and matlab it's very, the film is in a way very aware of itself. That could also be said about it. Matlab, when they describe Sophie's boyfriend, she says he's the kind of guy who says, I've got to take a leak, and wears pre-distressed baseball hats. This happens right in the beginning of the film, and then towards the middle of the film, we actually see Patch. This is the guy, and he's actually wearing a baseball cap, and he says, sorry, I had to take a leak. These are the character definitions in this film. The one sequence that I wanted to talk about and give you a little significance of it also was the bathroom sequence, which I will come to. But let's just read some more comments before that. Sejal Mal, Manhattan, yes. Woody Allen. Tanmay Lele, love the music of this movie. Pranav Patil, Little Woman too, yes. Can you see the similarity between Francis and Fleabag? Yes, yes. I made that correlation as soon as I watched Fleabag last year. I definitely can. Like the protagonists are similar in a way, but I would say Fleabag is funnier and Fleabag is better made than this in a way. It's shot better. It's yeah, I would say the performances are also better in a way. Or हाँ मतलब Fleabag is hilarious and sometimes it's intense also. Frances Ha is never intense, but Fleabag can be intense. Her voice suddenly shifts as if she's a different person. Yes. Pratyush, what's the politics of cis male directing film exploring women? But the thing is that like Greta Gerwig also wrote this, and this was essentially her story in a way. But Noah Baumbach sort of made it visual because he already had experience in film. But if you're asking about politics of cis male directing film exploring women in urban spaces, I did not see anything that was problematic. I think it was okay. And the tone of the film is also quite um light-hearted actually. But what is also interesting is that इसके पहले नोआ बॉम्बैक ने जो भी फिल्में बनाई हैं they are all semi autobiographical. इन्होंने पहले बनाई थी The Squid and the Whale, and that is literally about his childhood because his parents also got divorced when he was young. Marriage Story is also quite semi-autobiographical. Why am I struggling with this word? Autobiographical, because he also had a divorce before he got married to Greta Gerwig. So most of his films are autobiographical, but this is the first one that he wrote with somebody else, and it's somebody else's story that he's trying to adapt into the film. But yeah, I couldn't see anything problematic per se with the film. It's funny. Hi Ayush Iravatti. Ravi Kodiyatar. I like feel good more than others. Is it because it makes me feel good? Probably, probably. But yeah, I mean, it's a very literal definition of a film category. It makes you feel good. That's it. I wouldn't call Frances a rom-com either. Like, if you had to put this film in a genre, for those who have watched the film, what genre would you put this as? It's not essentially romantic. It might be a comedy, but it's also a lot more than that. Maybe I would put it in coming of age, I think. So the sequence that I wanted to talk about, and that to me also was very impressive when I read about it for the first time. So there is a scene in this film that had 42 retakes. And when I tell you which scene this is, you might be surprised because it is not a scene it's not the most important scene in the film, but in a way it is significant. But it had 42 takes and they shot it for 2 hours. And Greta Gerwig also wrote an article about it on New York Times. And she wrote in detail what all those 42 takes were like. So take by take, she's describing the take one was like this, take two was like this. You can search Google for NY Times and then take 42 and Francis Ha scene ever if you want to read it. So at some point, they are all drunk at this bar, and Greta has also had like some bad experiences happen to her lately. We're not gonna go into the plot a lot because really just watch the film. I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm just going to talk about what I found interesting and what I thought he's using interestingly. She, as is clear also from her definition of patch and her judgment of Patch, that she is not particularly fond of Patch, who is Sophie's boyfriend. But since they're best friends, she also makes it her business to sort of school Patch. And then she says, Patch, I want to love you, but I need you to get drunk. We'll get a bottle of your most expensive vodka for the table. And then she asks Sophie to come with her to the bathroom. So they say, come with me. And she says, where? She says, bathroom. Then because they ordered the most expensive vodka, so she says, Patch, you got this money wise. Patch is this really fancy, like rich dude who's a financial analyst or something. So he makes a lot of money basically. So this is the scene that had 42 retakes. This is the bathroom scene. I think it's 1.5 minutes long. But the writing in this scene is also quite good. And I can understand why Noah Baumbach would want to shoot this scene to perfection because it is important in a way to the story and the plot. And it's also such a powerful scene, which we will read out what it says in a bit. So this had 42 retakes and they had to be in that bathroom for 2 hours when they shot this. And Greta Gerwig has a description of take by take um for this entire scene. It was amazing to me that she remembered all those takes and what she felt in those takes and what Noah's remarks were. And she also remembered the take which they used, which was take 29 that they finally used in the film. So it wasn't even that like they used the last take or something. He watched the dailies again and then he thought that the take 29 was the perfect one. So this is a sequence where she's sort of confronting Sophie about her dating choices and she says, I was lying, I don't love Patch. And Sophie says, I do love him. And somehow, like, Francis is assuming in this scene that they're both somehow same people, and then they have the same taste in dating people. And she says, "Since when? When did this happen?" "It's been happening." "That's fucking bullshit. Come on." "No, you're bullshit, and you're making me feel really bad right now. I want to love him if you love him, but you don't love him." She says, "I do." And then this dialogue especially, she says, "Sophie, I fucking held your head while you cried. I bought special milk for you. I know where you hide your pills. Don't treat me like a 3 hour brunch friend." And she says, "I'm not talking to you while you're like this." And then she sort of punches the wall behind her, like smashes the wall. And this is also the first time we see Frances angry in this film. And yeah, this drunk that she would sort of be violent. But this dialogue delivery, especially if you watch the film again, like listen to how she delivers this dialogue, this entire sequence. I'll just read it again for effect. "Sophie, I fucking held your head while you cried. I bought special milk for you. I know where you hide your pills. Don't treat me like a 3 hour brunch friend." I think this is the most matlab, strongly written sequence in this entire film. There's also the iconic moment that you have with your friend at a party that we will come back to in a bit. But yeah, this is definitely up there for me. Before moving to the next sequence, एक बार हम वापस comments पे आ जाते हैं. Jala Mayar Bhoyer, what a talented couple Greta and Noah, definitely. Pranav Patil, Francesa feels like Noah's version of Lady Bird in many ways, now that I think about it. Maybe. Any dark genre recommendation? There was this film that I really liked called Dark City. I will just type it out here. Also, I've started rereading 1984 yesterday. Book recommendations is not my department here, but I finished reading Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things last night and I started reading 1984. And Dark City is a film noir film kind of, and it's like in a way based in a very 1984ish Orwellian world. And yeah, Google Dark City and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But I really liked the film, and it also reminded me of this Orson Welles film, I think, called The Trial, which was also a book by Franz Kafka. But yeah, you should watch Dark City. I would say it's quite dark. It's also reminded me of The Truman Show, in a way, like it's the world of The Truman Show also. So I'm also like very much in that zone right now because I've started rereading 1984, and I think I will also rewatch Dark City while we're at it. Ishu Kumar, Rahul, will you become my friend? Sure, man, but I don't know you though. Ayush Irabati, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. The Color Purple, Alice. Hmm, nice. There's a musical called The Last 5 Years. Do you know that? I don't know about it. Sarvesh Agarwal, will Franz Kafka's Trial a good first read? I haven't read the book, I've just seen the film that Orson Welles made. I've read Metamorphosis and I've read his compilation of letters to my father. Uh, if you think that Letters to My Father will help you in your life, then definitely read it. Maybe you can start with that to get a sense of what Kafka was like, because Metamorphosis also he essentially wrote about his father and how his father made him feel. So maybe you can start with Letters to My Father, the compilation, and then move to Metamorphosis. But Metamorphosis can also get quite intense if you haven't read anything in that zone or genre. But you can really just start with anything if you want to. Does watching movies shape a personality for real? Doing anything shapes personality, but especially if you're consuming literature or film, then yeah, that has to shape you in a certain way. I definitely think that all the films that I watched have shaped me in a certain way. Like it gives you validation in a way. It gives you answers for some things that maybe you're questioning. And yeah, it's also a great pastime, I guess. Ayushira Bhatti, have you ever tried to use the term Kafkaesque after reading Franz Kafka? Do you guys think, because Kafkaesque for me, like the term in itself is quite similar to the world that Dostoevsky also creates. In my head, like it's the same, uh, yeah, just same sort of dark urban. I'm looking for a word. Is it tingy? Like this बहुत ही खराब से ऐसे पता नहीं ऐसे वॉल से पेंट निकल रहा है somehow वैसी सी इमेजरी आती है मुझे काफका और दोस्तोयेव्स्की दोनों से कि पुरानी दीवारें हैं बहुत पुराना सा घर है गंदा सा पता नहीं but I've never said Kafkaesque. If I said Kafkaesque in real life I would be undateable, which is a running joke in Frances Ha that we will see. I've made a compilation of all the jokes, but no, I don't know what I would use to describe Kafkaesque. Sure, issue, sure. Priyal Kaldra, Frances Ha in specific makes you feel like a real person. Huh, yeah, because this is in a way like characters like this, like these also work because they're so real, they're so human. Like as opposed to say something like a superhero film, wherein like it's just so far out. It's fiction, sure, sometimes it's sci-fi also, but yeah, it's just like you can never actually relate with those characters, and especially say something like a big sort of Shah Rukh Khan blockbuster film in India also. Can you actually ever relate with those characters? It's just maybe maybe like a it's like a power trip, like an indirect power trip when you're watching those characters. It's like, yeah, Shah Rukh Khan, yeah, go for it, man, something, I don't know. But yeah, the thing with films like these, say Fleabag or this film, or any of Wes Anderson's films also, which I should also mention. Noah Baumbach used to be an assistant director with Wes Anderson. I think he was an AD on a couple of his films. I think the Darjeeling Limited and Grand Budapest also, maybe he was the associate. I haven't read Gabriel Garcia. Can you also do a live about mid 90s? Just the time, or do you mean the films from that time? There's a reference to Kafkaesque in Squid and the Whale too. Might be, might be. Squid and the Whale, although like it's, I think if I remember correctly, it's set from the perspective of a small boy, but it gets quite dark and also quite weird at times. Pratyush Scorsese is proud somewhere. Harsh favorite band. I don't have favorites anymore, but I've been I keep recommending her everywhere, man. Like please listen to Adrienne Lenker. I really, really like her songwriting. She's also somebody who's very vulnerable in her writing. She's also very human in her writing. I'm sure Greta Gerwig would like her music. Please listen to Adrienne Lenker. She's an American singer-songwriter. Her, yeah. Wes Anderson produced Frances Ha. That's amazing. Really, that's cool. Was I saying something about real person? Yeah, real person. They also talk about that in Frances Ha also when her credit card gets refused and she says that I'm not a real person yet. I felt that way also, man. Like my first year in Mumbai, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to use a debit card or anything. And that's a evolution that we all go through, no? And films like these sort of validate you. Which is what, like my friend was also telling me that when people in India are now watching films like, say, E Balayu or other sort of independent films, then they're realizing that, oh, ये तो real characters है, ये तो हम देखते हैं रोज, ये तो हमारे जैसे ही लोग हैं. In a way, it's also what happened during Italian neorealism also, which is essentially what the movement was about. Talk about real people, real stories. And so, yeah, when people can relate to the characters as if they're real human beings, then the film hits differently than, like, say, a superhero film. Can you really relate to Captain America or Iron Man? Sure, they're cool people, but I don't know if you can relate to them. Okay, mid 90s in is a film. It's a film by Jonah Hill. Wes and Noah made Mr. Fantastic Fox together too, if I'm not wrong. Yes, yeah, I think Noah co-wrote the script maybe, but it's an adaptation of a book by Roald Dahl. I found Greta Gerwig's Little Woman extremely boring. That's fair enough. I thought it was quite exciting. I thought that Saoirse Ronan's performance was also quite strong. I liked it. Did you give an audition or something for this channel? Yes, I gave an audition to Web of Munjal. Not really. So The Last 5 Years is a musical film starring Anna Kendrick. Not many people know about this film, but it's a very realistic representation of modern relationship. Hmm. I've only seen that. What's that singing film with Anna Kendrick? The choir film. Pitch Perfect. I've only seen that by Anna Kendrick. Harsh with a sad emoji face. I did not give an audition. Webber called me one night and he said, "Do you want to do it?" I said, "I'll think about it." And then the next day, I thought about it and I said, "Let's do it." Ayush Irabatti, what do you do? Tell us more about you. Really? I am still a student actually. I've made a couple of short films, couple of short documentaries. I work with Vaibhav on his films. I've been working with him for the last 4-5-ish years, 4-ish years. I work also as a photographer. I work as a film editor. I also work with film festivals here and there. I was working with the Ramshala International Film Festival a couple of months ago. So yeah, I don't know, work keeps coming from here and there, but I'm still in college. It's my last semester in college, and we are currently making our diploma film. So yeah, exciting times. Asif Khan, simple but hard-hitting film Wildfire by Jake Gyllenhaal. Okay, noted. Ravi Kotiadar, bro, now if you haven't seen mid 90s, please watch it tonight. Mid 90s. Interesting. Somehow, like, I've been very zoned out from like the new American films. I don't know. Undateable. It's a movie. Cool. I'll come back to these images and we can talk again after this. This is one of the examples of, like, she says, I make love as opposed to have sex. So this is a character called Benji, and he keeps calling her undateable. And something happens, and it reminds her of, she says, a Virginia Woolf book. And again, like he says, undateable. It's a running joke. It's moderately funny. But yeah, towards the end, the roles also reverse. I made a sequence of this. And towards the end, she has a successful dance performance, which we will see. I'm cutting ahead, but just to finish this, um, she has a successful dance choreographed performance. She's a dancer essentially, and so the roles reverse, and he comes to her now, and he says, "Did you see the exhibit at the Met, the museum in New York, about the textiles that influence Matisse? That's what your piece reminded me of. Not the paintings, but the textiles." And then he calls himself undateable. So the roles kind of reverse. And in a way, we also see the trajectory of Frances's character throughout the film. In a way, we also see her evolve. Surprisingly, although not that surprisingly, but a lot of the American film critics have been quite harsh about this film, especially this review that I was reading on Roger Ebert's website. Although he didn't write it, Roger Ebert passed away in 2012, if I'm correct. This film came out in 2013, and it was another writer who was writing for the website, he was very harsh somehow on Noah Baumbach, and he completely hated the film, it seems like, and he was making like personal attacks on Noah Baumbach. You can read the review, it's on Roger Ebert's website. And he was saying like, oh, Noah Baumbach is so privileged. He was born at the right place with the right kind of contacts. And even with that, he hasn't been able to make a good film. Just really harsh, really, yeah. But there were also like some good film reviews also. There was one review which I think it was on New York Times, and it said that because 27 is also Frances Ha is 27 throughout this film, and 27, the age is also mentioned many times in this film. And at some point, she also asks her friend, "Is 27? Do I look old to you?" And the friend says, "How old?" And she says, "How older than I am?" And she says, and he says, "How old are you?" She says, "I'm 27." And then the guy says, "But 27 is old," which is a dialogue that I sort of had to pause and think about. Is 22 also old? Please write down in the chat below and let me know. But funnily enough, 27, but not funnily actually, but interestingly, 27 is also the age at which so many rock stars have died. Think Jim Morrison and people from that era. I think there's also like in pop culture, there's also like a 27 club because a lot of rock stars have suspiciously, Janis Joplin also, she also died at 27. Suspiciously, like 27 is an age that a lot of people, especially in the music industry, sort of pass away at, which is strange. Kurt Cobain, I think, also died when he was 27. Going to quickly check that. Yeah, he was 27. See, strange, no? And 27 is also, yeah, the age that Frances is also living in this film, and that's when she has a coming of age experience. So, but the review said that Frances in this film asks that if she's too old, if she looks older than 27. But the film reviewer also points out that she can never look, like he points out how, like, a few generations ago, at 27, the average American middle class man or person really had gotten married, had at least one kid, had a successful career, had a house of his own. So in a way, like 27 isn't that old now in like today's terms. But back then, like 27 was definitely like adult, complete, real person. And then he finishes that paragraph off by saying that like that was true for all American middle class people, unless you were a rock star, at which case you were dead at 27. So it's funny now, maybe, or maybe it's too soon still, but that's what he wrote anyway. We'll come back to the comments and then we'll look at what will we look at? One second. Yeah, the one metaphor that I found interesting, and then the moment monologue, and then the closing. Cool. Dark City ending was quite unexpected, yes. Where to find your shorts in my cupboard? That's a really, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's the horrible, terrible joke. Priya, Philip, you can find my shorts if I can send you unlisted links. I'm not comfortable with my shorts being on YouTube anymore somehow. But you can maybe text me on Instagram. I'm happy to send you unlisted links. Priya Philip loved how Noah and Greta used Le Quatre Se Coupe soundtrack from 400 Blows in France's Ha. Unforgettable run. Did you like it too? I loved that run, and especially like वो actually बहुत बार है ऐसा, at least 3 बार है I think वो run when she's going from one direction to another, और वो ऐसा moving कुछ तो shot है उनके, उसके पीछे गाने चल रहे हैं. गाने इतने तगड़े तगड़े हैं ना यार इसमें डेविड बावी के गाना है, पॉल मकार्टनी का एक गाना है इसमें. But yeah, that run always hits you. And if you also see, वो हमेशा एक character transition पे उन्होंने वो एक run डाला है streets का. Jibin PK 22 is 22 years old. That is correct. Absolutely correct. Anubhav Biswas, Cobain was 27 when he died. Yep. Avicii died at 28. 28. Is 28 the new 27? I shouldn't be joking about this. Asif Khan, your favorite film of Al Pacino? I loved him in The Heat. I loved him in Dog Day Afternoon. That's about it. Ayush Irabati, tell me a famous Oscar Award winner, movie or actor you disagree with. I haven't really thought about something like that. I don't know, man. I don't know. So coming to the one moment ka monologue, this is also like moderately well written, I would say. And but it hits differently, like in the rhythm of the film, especially if you're rooting for the character. So she's at this party where she's being very awkward and clumsy, and suddenly she calls somebody and says, I want this one moment. It's what I want in a relationship, which might explain why I am single now. Haha. It's kind of hard. It's that thing when you're with someone and you love them and they know it, and they love you and you know it. But it's a party and you're both talking to other people and you're laughing and shining, and you look across the room and catch each other's eyes. But not because you're possessive or it's precisely sexual, but because that is your person in this life. And it's funny and sad, but only because this life will end, and it's this secret world that exists right there, in public, unnoticed, that no one else talks about, no one else knows about. It's sort of like how they say that other dimensions exist all around us, but we don't have the ability to perceive them. That's that's what I want out of a relationship, or just life, I guess. Love. I sound stoned. It's funny and it's well written and it hits, definitely hits. And then towards the end, we also see that she has that moment with Sophie. Not a spoiler, but her friendship with Sophie keeps having its ups and downs, which is also the case with, in a way, Frances's life also in New York. She keeps having so many ups and downs professionally, and also like in the sense that she keeps shifting from one place to another. At some point, she's also homeless and jobless also, which is the worst combination of anything. Towards the end, when she has a successful dance performance, she also has that moment with Sophie, wherein her boss, in a way, is praising her for her performance, but she's still distracted and she's looking at Sophie, and who's also making eyes at her. And she says, it's just great. I have to say, that's the boss talking to her. And then suddenly she stops herself and says, who are you making eyes at? And she says, that's Sophie. She's my best friend. And then Sophie is also looking at her. And they're having this exact moment wherein they're at a party and they're shining, but you look at your best friend and it's another world that you step into away from the public. It is a beautiful moment that she's describing. Very wholesome, very, very wholesome. I'll talk about the closing and then the metaphor, but let's read some more comments. I'm really enjoying the comments today, I think. How to understand editing like you become an editor. Edit films. Maybe you could read, but also I would just really recommend practice, but you could also read literature about it. There's a great book called In the Blink of an Eye, or you could really just watch. There are so many video essays about editing on YouTube at this point. But also, if you just watch enough films, you start to notice the technical details also of editing. It's sort of like, in a way, I have to warn you, it also takes out a lot of magic from the film once you start understanding that there is a certain way these films are edited, which is why they appeal to you and which is why they make sense to you. But essentially, it's the montage theory, and essentially, it's Kuleshov effect that you put two images together and then you cut them together, and they form meaning. As individual shots, they're nothing, but together the entire montage forms meaning. And how you cut that is the entire game. In a way, like editing is definitely like one of the most important aspects in a film. Editing is what makes a film actually. Without that, it's just shots, no, like random shots. Editing is very important. Noah Baumbach, I think, is somebody who really knows that. And whatever film he's making, he tries to use the pace, especially of the editing, to complement that film, and he does that very well. It's not like all his films are cut like Francis Ha, but because this film has a certain mood, and also with the music, so you have to cut it a certain way. Naman Narayan Singh, I have seen one of your shots, the one where you shot, which was shot in Mandir. I am really sorry, I can't recall the name, but I remember it and I loved the character. Thank you, Naman Narayan Singh. I think you may have watched it before I unlisted them. The one he's talking about is called Bell, and I am happy to send it to whoever wants to watch it. This was a film I made in my first year, and this was a film I really just made very unconsciously. Like my first year in Mumbai, I was just really operating unconsciously. But yeah, this is a film that I am a little proud of also. It's okay. Matlab, it's an okay film. It also went to this one festival in Pune called First Cut Film Festival. But yeah, that was in a way like my first short film also. I'll send it to anybody. Text me on Instagram if you want to watch it. But thank you, Naman Narayan Singh. That means a lot. Asif Khan, if I say there is no actor who can match their acting skills of Johnny Depp, would you agree? Yeah, I've been watching. Do you guys watch the Graham Norton show? It's the funniest talk show ever, man. I love British humor. I've been watching Johnny Depp's compilation on YouTube for some reason, and a lot of them are from Graham Norton, and they're so funny, man. And Johnny Depp is just really being himself on the Graham Norton show. But I've also like lately really gotten into Johnny Depp for some reason. I really like him, man. He's so cool and he's so composed and he just really knows what to say. And the same goes for Bill Murray. I've also really gotten into Bill Murray these days, who's also somebody. Has he worked with Noah Baumbach? Probably not, but he's worked with Wes Anderson on a couple of his films. Bill Murray is also somebody I really look up to, not as an actor also, but just as a person also. Like he's just so cool, man, and he's so funny. And I loved him in the Sofia Coppola film also. But he's so humble also, actually. All of his bits from the David Letterman show are also so funny. You guys should watch it. I think these are two of my favorite talk shows. I'll just type them out. Maybe I'm typing Letterson for some Letterman. Letterman? David Letterman and Graham Norton. David Letterman is American, Graham Norton is British. He's actually Irish, but the show is British. I think Graham Norton's show is my favorite talk show. It's really funny. And they're all also drunk on the show when they're there. So watch Graham Norton clips. He's so funny, man. Please tell me something about montage. Maybe we'll do the Soviet montage thing in one of the episodes. But essentially, in pop culture, montage is now something that, like anything wherein you're experimenting with time, as in like you're showing a scene happening very quickly and उसके पीछे music डाल दिया और fast fast cut कर दिया. So in modern usage, that is what montage has become now. But montage essentially is very simply just a collection of shots that put together form some kind of a meaning. That's the montage theory. Because like to us, it's very common to see these moving images cut next to each other. But understand that like at some point somebody sat down and actually came up with this. Actually thought that, oh, you know what, like we can maybe tell a story by just putting all of these images together. And that was sort of what made the grammar of editing. So montage is really just the putting together of all these different shots in order that they somehow make sense in their sequence. I made some short films with Mad 116. Pratyush Bhaiya told me about the film, and I'm loving this series too. Okay, nice. मणिपाल का एकदम से फ्लैशबैक हो गया मुझे. What are the books and movies you read and watched recently? I finished God of Small Things yesterday, last night, which I also recommend actually. It's a beautiful book. Arundhati Roy writes so well, matlab. I am in awe. I was in awe of her writing the entire time. It was so satisfying to finish that book also. I read that. Uske pehle I was reading Roald Dahl's biography. I am now rereading 1984. After that, maybe I want to read Steve Jobs' biography, which is like a thick, very thick one. It's by Walter Isaacson, but and I think I should be able to read it now that my attention span is at its peak in the lockdown. So I should finish as many books as I can. I'll read that next. I also want to reread Camera Lucida by Roland Barthes. I was also thinking that we could have a discussion about Camera Lucida. It would be interesting. Photography is definitely something that I have many thoughts about because I am actually a photographer first, I would say, because that's what I started out with. Like I've had a camera ever since I've been 13, and I've just always loved the process of just going around and making pictures. I've never made, I've never really tried analog though. I've tried it when I was a kid, but not really like as a practice, just like family photos or something. I would say I'm a digital photographer. I love digital. I love the fact that you can post process the photo so much. I love having that flexibility and that yeah, there's so much scope for innovation. I love Photoshop also. I love the possibilities of Photoshop. So yeah, I'm a digital photographer first. I don't know why I'm talking about that, but yeah, Camera Lucida I'll read. What movies you watched recently? What have I been watching? I watched, yeah, mostly though I think I've only been watching movies that I have to talk on the stream about. Outside of that, lately I've just been reading and listening to music. But I think I said also in an earlier live stream that I've been really getting into Eric Romer. I was watching his films. What else did I watch? I watched Dead Man by Jim Jarmusch. I rewatched Close Up. I rewatched a lot of Wong Kar-wai. I watched Mother by Darren Aronofsky, which I somehow had not watched, and I really liked it. It's a very cool film. Maybe we can talk about Mother, but I have so many thoughts about Mother because I liked the film, but I will also have to read some reviews about Mother to actually get a sense of what it means. I watched that Charlie Kaufman film also. I'm thinking of ending things, which I liked, but I do like Charlie Kaufman. Not that my opinions have any authority, but I do prefer him as a writer. Like Eternal Sunshine is a film that I've watched five, six times. That's a film I will watch each time I have a breakup. But I'm thinking of ending things. It's just a one-time watch. It's forgettable. But yeah, I prefer him as a writer, Charlie Kaufman. I don't know if too experimental is a thing, but I think he's too experimental when he's directing. Although I did like Anomalisa. Synecdoche, New York, I did not understand because I also watched it like a lot of years ago. I've been watching a lot of documentaries also lately. I watched Baraka. I watched the Katsi trilogy. I watched Oslo August 31st, which I liked. But also mostly like I think last year was the year when I really got into going around the country and going to these film festivals that keep happening. और मामी की भी screenings होते रहती है मुंबई में. So mostly those films actually. Outside of that, I think I mostly read or listen to music at this point. Most of my like film watching education actually happened when I hadn't even joined film school. It was when I was studying engineering actually at Manipal, which is a college that I share with Naman Narayan Singh. And I was there for 2 years, which is where in my hostel room I was just watching films all the time and not attending classes. So that's when most of my film education actually happened. After that, I've just been going around in Mumbai, really. That's what I've been doing. I rewatched Ibalayo, which I really liked. Oh, I watched this Dutch film called Borgman, which was eerily similar to Parasite actually. Came out in 2013. It's from Netherlands. It's great. It's a very well made film. You should watch Borgman. I love the films usually that come out of these countries, yeah, matlab, Scandinavian countries. I like films that come out of Netherlands, Denmark, Netherlands, Sweden. Netherlands is not Scandinavian, but I'm just saying as a part of it. Norway also. Oslo, August 31st is from Norway. What else? I watched the documentary The Great Hack. I'm just looking at my list right now. I watched The Namesake for the first time. Quite liked it. I watched a film called Wittgenstein, who was, I think he was an Austrian philosopher or maybe German. So this is a film about this philosopher. Very interesting film because the man was also quite interesting. And the film is made by a theater director, so it's shot in a very uh, theater-like way. The film is called Wittgenstein. I think I rewatched Midnight in Paris because I just wanted to look at Paris. I had watched Decalogue, which is the series by Krzysztof Kieślowski. I watched Uncut Gems for the first time. It's so good. It's so good. The editing in that film also so good. What else? I think I watched Paris, Texas also by Wim Wenders. That was also great. But yeah, ऐसे तो मतलब देखता रहता हूँ बीच बीच में. But somehow I don't really watch a lot of series now. I don't know. I just don't feel the need for it. There's just so many other things to do in life. Undateable. Am I really just ranting on now? Searching opening montage was amazing. I think Weber also really loves searching, and in a way that also inspired his short film Time Zoned. Is Mistress America as good as Francis? I actually haven't seen Mistress America. How do you view the last scene of God of Small Things, which is between the siblings? Oh shit. There was no direct reference of incest, so I am not going to make any assumptions. But yeah, I'm not going to make any assumptions. But anyhow, it was still quite hard hitting. Please talk about photography and whatever you want. Thank you, man. Sure. You talking about it because you are a free soul. We all are. We all are, I think. It's really just a matter of acknowledgement. My favorite movie by my favorite director, Frances Ha. Have you watched Anomalisa? I have. Yes. I liked Anomalisa. I liked it. Mother, not everyone's cup of tea. True. Clint Eastwood is a legend. I love Bill Murray too. Just finished rewatching Lost in Translation in an interview with Charlie Rose. I love also Charlie Rose. I feel like he's such a smart man, Charlie Rose, and he really knows how to carry a conversation. I've also been watching a lot of Arundhati Roy interviews lately. There's also one with Charlie Rose, Arundhati Roy, and Salman Rushdie. Very good conversation. They're talking about India. I especially find Arundhati Roy's discussions or thoughts rather on India very interesting. It's a very, I think she has a very worldly perspective on India, which if we could listen to her thoughts, I'm not saying we have to agree, but it's interesting still. Like there's a lot to learn from her perspective on these things. In an interview with Charlie Rose, Sofia Coppola talks about how she had no one else but Bill for the role and how she loved it, putting him in awkward positions just to see his reaction. Man, like I feel like that would be any filmmaker's dream, yeah, to work with Bill Murray. He's in a way I feel like now though he just plays one character, but within that one character also, I mean like in mostly all films that he works in now, just this one character. But even with that, he finds so many ways to like experiment. He's so good, man. He's such a great actor. I'm not on Letterboxd. Vishal Patil would recommend A Son on Netflix. Okay, I might check it out. Coming back to this film that we're talking about, I will just quickly talk about the closing sequence and then I'll tell you one thing that I only like understood or actually realized when I was watching this today, when I rewatched it today. What's it called? Okay. So the closing is essentially when she some at some point during the film she also goes to Paris and she comes back from it. Many things happen really, but she sort of just has this experience wherein she changes internally and then yeah, it's a coming of age narrative essentially. So towards the end when she comes back to New York again and she's also doing well professionally, maybe she's making more money now. So as I said, I think early on in the stream there are a lot of references to space and how that sort of changes your life. And in a way, if you move to a big city, the places that you rent and the people that you rent places with, somehow like that time in that city is also a representative of like that space in which you were living. Like I remember my time in Mumbai very clearly based on when I was living in a hostel, when I was living with two other people in a 1 BHK, when I had started living alone in my own 1 RK, but only for a month because then the lockdown had to happen. So I just have clearly segmented, yeah, memories in my head about my time in Mumbai based on my renting situations. So in a way, that's also something that this film touches upon because she's also somebody who keeps shifting between places. And so in this film, there are a lot of metaphors about like big spaces moving to small spaces. In a way, she also moved from like a family residential area in Sacramento in California to a very urban city like New York. And there's also a very interesting metaphor. At some point, they're having a house party. And so they say that they're going to the friend's party, it's a house party. And she says it's not actually a house party, but it's the theme of the party. And it's actually happening in an apartment. So a house party in an apartment. Sacramento to New York. I don't know. I didn't read this anywhere. I'm just making it up. But one of the reviews talked about how, like, towards the end, because like when I read that, this also stood out to me, but I will come back to that. So she writes towards the end Frances Halliday on a piece of paper, which is her actual full name. And then she tries to put it into the letterbox ka jo wo hota hai, at her new place. But it's too small for her. So she has to fold it and then she keeps it inside. And now it reads Frances Ha. And that's when the credits roll up. So that's the name of the film. So essentially, it's just a short version of Frances Halliday. So she is actually called Frances Halliday, but since she's living in New York, she has to reconcile with smaller spaces. So she has to fold it and then keep it inside. In a way, this is also correlating with her professional career because when she was in college, she was aiming to become this dancer choreographer. But she also says in this film that when she came out of college, she had to let go of that ambition because she suddenly realized what a brutal economy that New York was, and so she had to now finally settle for something less, but in a way it's still her, but a little folded. And now she also works like a day job, but she also is able to dance outside of that and is also able to choreograph her own performances. So it's still her ambition, but just a little folded because it's New York City, so you have to make compromises. So this was something that I only thought about on this watch which was interesting to me also. Because इसके पहले मतलब I wasn't able to understand, like what's the significance? Frances Ha, she folds it. Like, okay, like it's a cool name, Frances Ha, but what's the significance? So, but you also see that throughout the film, like a house party happening in an apartment. So again, like bigger space, but you have to fit it into another smaller space. So that's the one takeaway that I had from the film this time when I watched it. वैभव इज सेइंग गाइस स्ट्रीम लाइक कर दो यार स्ट्रीम लाइक और सुपर चैट दे दो यार अगर मन है तो और कम्युनिटी मेंबर्स भी बन जाओ अगर मन है तो Jivin PK, Three Colors, Red changed my entire perspective towards films. I took films seriously after I watched Red. That's great, dude. I love that Kieślowski quote that Nitch keeps posting. He had this interaction with a little French girl in Paris who had watched his film, and she told him that after I watched your film, I started believing in souls. And Kieślowski later said that, that's the reason I make my films. If it's not money, it's not success, it's not fame. If one little girl in Paris can believe in a soul after watching my film, then it's worth it to go through the entire process of filmmaking to get it out there. It's a beautiful quote. And Kieślowski also, I think he had a deep understanding of the audiovisual medium. Maybe we'll look at Kieślowski someday, but anyhow, you should watch Kieślowski. Watch his Decalogue, watch his French trilogy, watch Double Life of Veronique. Very good filmmaker, amazing filmmaker. Vishal Patil, hey, I've picked the Three Colors trilogy for my watch list this month. Is there a sequence you'd recommend watching the trilogy? I don't recommend anything, but maybe just go by the colors that are in the actual French flag. Is it red first? I think it's red. Okay, so anyway, it's horizontal. It's blue, white, and then red. So do that. Blue, white, and red. Man, France has inspired so much cinema. This film is also inspired by French New Wave. The French trilogy is also inspired by France, by Kieślowski. I don't actually know how to feel about France though. Their politics is a little messed up. There's a lot of corruption there. There's a lot of bureaucracy there. And France can also be like a brutal economy in a way, actually. One of my deep regrets in this life is that I've been to Paris, but it was this silly school trip. So we couldn't go to the Louvre. It's something that I really regret, and I will have to go to Paris again. I went to Paris when I was 16ish, and it was a like a cultural exchange trip. And we were in a bus of school children. I was also a school child, actually. What is a school child? And our bus passed by the Louvre. And I remember almost crying and being angry at the principal of our school. It's like, why would you not stop at the Louvre? There's Mona Lisa inside. How can you pass by the Louvre? And they took us to like some Disneyland or some Asterix park, you know, instead of the Louvre. But Paris is an interesting city, and France is an interesting country. I remember reading, is it Da Vinci Code that's set in Paris? It talks a lot about the Louvre. That's where I sort of had that Louvre imagery. And I really wanted to go, but the bus didn't stop, dude. It's okay to have some regrets in life. Have you watched Gamagar by Achal Mishra? I have. I also met Achal Mishra at the uh, Mum Mumbai Film Festival after party last year. Weird flex, but I also watched Gamaghar. I liked it. The first part of it, I really enjoyed the cinematography of it. So good, so good. He also finds a lot of his inspiration in the Japanese masters, which he is quite vocal about also. So yeah, I loved it. It was really good. Gamaghar, a lot of people sort of could not understand it, could not enjoy it also, but understandable, no? But the cinematography and the sound work and the pace of the film, very meditative. I'm also a fan of Achal Mishra's photography, if you look at his Instagram. Great. Abhinav Pathak, wo Rahul, brilliant. Thank you. I think I'm also quite proud of this one analysis of Francis Ha. Uh, Francis Ha is also like a film that I think. Oh yeah, I should say this. So I was introduced to Francis Ha after I had seen a poster, like a poster that was stuck on the wall of a flat in the series that Dhruv Sehgal made called Little Things. I think in season one, there is one shot wherein there's like a poster of Frances Ha on the wall behind the characters. That is where I saw the poster and then I watched the film. And I think I also said this to Dhruv Sehgal when we were shooting his episode for Chalchitra. I think maybe that's the only thing I said to him. But I remember saying this to him that, thank you for showing that poster. I watched the film and I really liked it. It's a great film. Greta Gerwig is a great actor. I hope Noah Baumbach continues to make films. Marriage Story is also excellent. It's so good. आज का एपिसोड भी लंबा हो गया काफी नहीं Double Life of Veronique is the one film in which nothing is making sense, but it forces you to believe that anything is possible. Yeah, probably. Nothing is making sense. I felt that way about Synecdoche, New York. I did not understand it. Maybe I'll rewatch it and then maybe I will understand it. Nice. Fun stream, guys. I'll see you again in the next episode. That's all I had to share about this film. Keep watching films, keep supporting the channel, and yeah, keep watching Chalchitra Talks also. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.